viewers, I hope you enjoyed the film No One's Watching, a unique take on George Orwell's 1984. I got a chance to sit down with George Borwell today, the director of that fine film, so we're going to talk about her ideas and her inspirations in producing this film. Thanks for joining us today, Gorge.
Thanks for having me here.
Alright, so we have a few questions we'd like to ask you about your new film, No One's Watching. So first of all, what was your inspiration in making this film?
So I think in 1984, a lot of the film's perspective, or a lot of the novel's perspective is just from Winston's point of view, and as such, we don't get that much information about the inner party itself. O'Brien is pretty much the only source of information about the inner party. So I thought it'd be really interesting to delve into his mind and his thoughts and convey that to the audience. And I didn't want No One's Watching to just repeat the plot of 1984. I wanted it to shock the audience and make sure that they were surprised by everything that they saw.
So how did you ensure that you shocked the audience in this way?
So a big part of this film was the fact that O'Brien was constantly watching Winston and Julia. And I think that this was a big part of shocking the audience as well, because that constant spying that O'Brien had on them, it depicted the government knowing every single thing that they were doing, and in doing so, I think the audience would hopefully be shocked by how much power and how much knowledge the government had about them.
Great. So speaking of the audience of the film, who was your intended audience for No One's Watching?
Well, you see, when I was reading 1984, I was very shocked by, again, how corrupt the government was and how much negative effects its power could have on the audience, or on the people of the society. So I think my audience for this film, the people that I wanted to see it, were just people who were really interested in getting to know the effects that a corrupt government could have on society.
So why did you choose to make the film from O'Brien's perspective? Why was he a better choice as a character than the other characters in the novel?
Well, for one thing, O'Brien was definitely the only person who had that much information about the inner party, so that was, again, something that I really wanted to communicate to the audience. But even more than that, I just find O'Brien to be such an interesting and complex character, especially with his relationship with Winston. It's just so interesting to see the ups and downs of that. For instance, Winston at the beginning almost idealizes him. He hopes that O'Brien is on his side, and he develops a trust in him. And then when that trust is broken, and when he realizes that O'Brien is actually part of the inner party, he's just completely devastated. So I think that emotional roller coaster that O'Brien is able to take Winston on, that's just such an interesting kind of relationship, and I really wanted to portray that through No One's Watching.
So what were the most difficult parts of making this film from O'Brien's point of view?
So definitely when you change a film that is so popular and a novel that is so popular as 1984 already is, it's very difficult to make sure that we don't end up alienating the fans of that story already. I mean, it has a huge fan base, and I didn't want to run the risk of upsetting any of them, especially because I made such a big change from the changing it to O'Brien's point of view. So that was definitely a very difficult thing to consider. But I would say that the most difficult part is making sure to also stay true to the original message of the film. I didn't want to mess up what Orwell was trying to say, so I wanted to incorporate that as well, but just show it from a new perspective.
Great. So speaking of staying loyal to the original novel, how did you choose which parts to leave out so that you could fit into the right time limit for a movie?
Well, of course, it's definitely very difficult to fit an almost 200-plus page novel into the time span of a movie, like maybe less than 2 hours. So that was definitely difficult to figure out which parts to incorporate. But I think the main thing that helped me with that was just deciding which details specifically corroborated George Orwell's message. So, for instance, I think he really wanted to emphasize the dangers of a totalitarian government, and as a result, I just tried to incorporate all the details that supported that and cut out extra fluff that maybe didn't go as well with that message.
So what did you hope that the audience learned when they watched your film?
So I really hope that they understood the perspective of someone who has that inside information about the corrupt government. So many of these dystopian films and novels are told from the perspective of the people who are being oppressed, of the people who are feeling the negative effects of that government. So I really hope that they understood the extent to which that kind of power can corrupt someone's mind, and I really hope that ended up shocking them.
So, Your film got overall positive reviews across the board, so do you have any plans to make any more films, similar projects to this one?
Yeah, absolutely. I haven't actually officially announced it yet, but I guess I will do that here. So I'm planning on creating a retelling of, again, another George Orwell novel called Animal Farm. And in doing that, I really want to incorporate many of the elements from 1984, such as that total invasion of privacy and the spying. And also, I find it really interesting because in today's day and world, Russia is definitely a big topic, and I think that just telling this perspective of Animal Farm through a movie and incorporating those 1984 elements will make for a really interesting film.
All right, great. I'm looking forward to it. So we're almost out of time today, but before we're done, is there anything else you want to tell the audience or anything that you thought they should know about you or the film that you made?
Sure. Well, one thing that really stood out to me while I was making this film was just that understanding of the power that a corrupt government could have. So I don't think I really understood that until I came to this point, and I really hope that the audience understands that as well. For instance, one particular scene just sticks out in my mind so clearly, and it's when O'Brien is sitting there behind his telescreen and he's watching while Winston and Julia sneak away, and they're just completely and totally oblivious to the fact that he's watching, but the extent of that invasion of privacy is just so high, and I think that really stood out to me as as a viewer of the film. So I really hope that the audience understood that as well, and just understood the extent to which a corrupt government could go.
That scene definitely stood out to me as well. Well, thank you for your time, and I'm looking forward to your next work.
Thank you so much. It was great being here.